That's the Eye of Argon. We've talked about it. We've laughed about it. It's the most ridiculous thing that probably any of us, well, maybe, have ever read, and certainly the most ridiculous thing we've talked about on this podcast. And it is and has the reputation of being the worst fantasy story ever written. It has been there's a party game attached to Eye of Argon where you
Oh.
have to read it without laughing. And if you read it, if you can make it through a line without laughing, a whole page without laughing, you are a professional reader and you don't get to read anymore. And if you read by laughing, you immediately have to pass somebody else. There's a whole game associated with it. People do readings at sci-fi conventions of it to great mirth. People, um, people do dramatic performances of it to highlight the ridiculousness of the action of it. You can see it on YouTube. There are many, 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 many readings of Eye of Argon on YouTube, and people doing exactly what we just did, which is just laughing because of the madness that is Eye of Argon. And that's the story. And it was, as I said, published in 1970. So this thing
1970,
has been,
okay.
1970. So this thing has been going on for over 50 years now as the worst fantasy story ever written.
Damn,
it's quite a legacy. It's quite a legacy. But, and this is what I've discovered, and what you see in the version of it that we have that has a little more narrative information. There's a lot of information about this story and the creation of it that kind of is worth pondering. Okay. And the first thing is that the author of this story, Jim Tice, was 16 years old when he wrote it. He was 16, and it was published in Osfan, which is not a magazine. It's a fanzine. It's a fanzine of the Ozark sci-fi fan community.
Okay.
Ozarks, you say?
Ozarks, yeah, I say.
Okay.
Ozarks, 1970. It's a fanzine. And what happened was it was published, and then a few months later, they interviewed him, the guys behind the fanzine, and he talked about the story. And he said, I was pretty excited to get something published. I know it's not that great, though. I was really happy to have a thing published, but looking at it, it's not that good. So he has no delusions about what he has done.
At least.
He has no delusions about what he has done. And then, for reasons known only to God, this story started getting passed around by professional editors and sci-fi people. It started getting passed around as, dude, you got to read this shit. And then it took on this life of being, oh my God, and do people doing just what we just did with it, which is what you have to do when you read it. You can't help it. It's that. It's that. It's the Eye of Argon. We just read it. And it took on this life, and it took on a life at sci-fi conventions. It became a party game with dramatic readings, and by 1984, it has become this thing. And Tice was interviewed on a radio show in which he said, I will never write anything ever again. I will never write anything ever again. Not a lot is known about what happened to him after that. There are rumors that he used to hang out at sci-fi conventions when there were readings of Eye of Argon. There are rumors that he went to work in technical journal writing. His obituary said that he had a wife and 2 sons. He died in 2002 at the age of 48.
Interesting.
So he's only a little bit older than we are.
Yeah.
Well, a little older than you guys.
I forget how old you are, Kieran.
I mean, I'm going to be 50 this year coming up.
Yeah.
But...
So he's that age. We don't know what he died of. We just know that he died in 2002. So he's been dead for 20 years.
Okay.
And he died at the age of 48. He never wrote anything ever again that was ever published. And there's kind of like this it to me it kind of has this it's kind of like Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Oh, yeah.
Plan 9 from Outer Space is the worst movie ever made. Except I've seen things that are worse than Plan 9 from Outer Space. I've sat through Plan 9 from Outer Space, and yeah, it's bad. But there's a coherent storyline that you can follow throughout. You pretty much know what's happening. It's Ed Wood. He's cheap, and he's lazy, and he's basically a guerrilla filmmaker. He's no-budget filmmaking, and he's not going to do a second take, and the sound is shit, and the script is whatever, but you kind of get it. There's enough bones there.
I mean,
I've seen things that are worse than Plan 9.
So have I. Jesus Christ, Vampire Hunter comes to mind. In fact,
Oh yeah, yeah. That's
The Room is worse than Plan 9.
The Room is No, I could believe that. I believe that.
I've seen both. I think that going back from what I know, where I first encountered Eye of Argon in those misting communities, I read things that were worse than Eye of Argon.
I believe that.
There are. So I'm gonna speak a word in Eye of Argon's defense. A few words. Two things. One thing. This is an original story, an original idea. Is it derivative? Yes. It's derivative as fuck. We all know that. You can read the first sentence and you know what you're getting. You know what you're getting, and you know it's probably not going to be very good. But it's original idea, original characters, original setting. It's not fan fiction. And I don't want to dump all over fan fiction, because I think fan fiction is one fan fiction is just a way for fans to have fun with something that they're fans of. And I think of all the things fans do, that's probably the most wholesome and creative, as long as it doesn't get into the weird kind of Transformers fan fiction that Kieran was talking about before.
Yeah, don't go down that alley.
As long as you don't go there. And fan fiction isn't intended to be art, so it's fine. But writing fan fiction spares you the trouble of having to create your own world and your own story and your own setting, because it's already been done for you. You're just rolling with what you're a fan of, and that's the point. This kid, 16 years old, wrote a story. Created his own thing, did his own thing, sent it off to a fanzine and got it published. And when you read the interview with him in the fanzine a couple months later, he still feels like, he did a thing and was happy with himself. And then, the sci-fi community did what it did with it, and then later on he's like, he wished he'd never done it at all. So that being said, there's a second thing that I'm going to defend Eye of Argon on, and that is that as goofy and stupid and nonsensical and insane as his language choices is, it does effectively create the right tone for the story he's trying to tell. You never understand exactly what's happening and why, but the tone is there, the mood is there. It's dark, it's bloody, it's grim, it's this, it's that, it's dark, it's savage, it's lurid. It doesn't make any sense.
It's definitely pulpy.
But it's pulp. He's writing a pulp story.
Yeah, it's definitely pulp.
He's slapping it together with Play-Doh, and he's throwing it at the wall, and he has no idea what he's doing. But it's the spaghetti noodles are wet.
Yeah, no, that's it.
But it's and it is identifiably pulp.
Identifiably pulp. It fits within the genre. There are things I've read. Like I read a self-insert Star Trek fan fiction once. That was like, and when I say self-insert, I mean literally the guy's using his own name.
Oh wow.
And having a romantic entanglement with Troy.
Fun.
I won't go into the detail. I read a story where some dude tried to do did a Han Solo Indiana Jones crossover.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. No, but I mean, I think you raise a good point. Like, the tone is consistent. Like, the language and how it is used may not be, but the tone, yeah, no, I could see that for sure.
I'll say this about it, and it's a defense as well, and it touches on some points that you made, Andrew, and that is, first off, Jim never thought it was good. He never said, "Oh, this is a masterpiece." He had no ego about it, and for that, I give him a lot of fucking leeway.
Yeah.
I give him a lot of fucking leeway, and I will say the second part of he never wrote anything again is a little sad. Not because, we didn't get an Eye of Argon Part 2 from him, but these are the attempts of a 16-year-old from the Ozarks to do something the purple prose style, so well known in like the pulpy Conan-esque adventures.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have an intrinsic vocabulary to handle that to begin with, that's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, it sure is.
And I'm going to say that, while it's horrific, it is horrific. It's really horrific.
It's bad,
It's bad. It's bad. It's a bad story.
But taken with the points of a 16-year-old wrote this.
Yeah.
A 16-year-old from the Ozarks, and let's be honest, the Ozarks are not necessarily known for having the best public school education system.
I mean, it's not. Yeah.
I mean, let's call it like it is. I feel that it is a good and brave attempt, and I feel that if he would have had better resources available to him, it would have been a bit more passable. But all things considered, he took a stab at a story. It has beginning, it has a middle, it has an end.
It has all of those things.
It does.
It has progression. You're not sure how it's progressing or where it's progressing, but it progresses.
I think Grigner can like teleport because he's just like no. We're gonna fucking bypass the foreplay and go straight to the sex now. And I was like, okay. Like, I'm not gonna bother touching the Eye of Argon to steal it. It's just gonna suddenly be in my possession because I don't know, barbarian magic.
It's like
because I fuck good. I don't know.
I rolled a d20. It's fine.
Yeah, 20 bitches. Yeah, no.
I'll be honest. I mean, I've heard of D&D campaigns worse done than this.
Yeah.
So I mean, there is a certain amount of honesty though to the Eye of Argon. I mean, yes, it's horrific. Yes, it causes me pain. I mean, and I will never be the same. But I can't hate on the writer. I can't.
No, and
I cannot bear him malice because while he submitted it for publishing, was not the voice that said, "Hey, let's publish this shit."
Yes,
and he was just thrilled to get something in print.
Yeah, and this was.
I think we must, in fact, turn to the publisher who did not publish it with good intent.
That may be. Because in the interview in the later issue, there seems to be some implication that the guys at the fanzine found this thing to be funny, and they gave him praise for taking it on the chin, and that's kind of like
they did not operate in good faith.
Why are you publishing it? And keep in mind, this is a fanzine, which means he didn't get paid.
Yeah, it's not like he's getting paid for it.
He didn't get paid anything for it. I mean, the Ozfan fanzine does not have a budget that they're paying money for Eye of Argon, which means that He wrote this thing for the fanzine. He didn't get paid. Then other people took his work, and there was sometime in the 70s a chapbook of it, missing the ending, which got lost somewhere along the way. It was in the original fanzine, but not in the thing that people were reading from. It got lost somewhere. So there was a chapbook of it, which didn't even credit him as the author, that just got passed around and everybody laughed about it. And he didn't get a dime. Like, I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. I just sold a short story to a magazine, Broadswords and Blasters. It's coming out sometime this fall. They said this is the kind of story you want. I wrote that kind of story. It's called The Great Vessel's Treason. It's planetary romance. They accepted it. They published it. They paid me money for it. It might suck. It might suck, but I've been paid. So I got something out of it. Even if everyone decides I'm the worst author in the history of the universe, I got something for my trouble. He didn't get a thing. He didn't get anything.
And I think that's the tragedy of this. The tragedy isn't his grasp of grammar or spelling or anything like that. Good editor could have fixed a lot of that shit. The tragedy, yeah, you're right, man. The tragedy, he didn't get paid a goddamn cent for it, except in ridicule.
Yeah. And it was obviously like something he was really excited about initially, and then, it was just basic. People just continuously, and I mean, we just did some of that, like pissed all over it.
Sure.
And that had to be crushing. Like,
Well, he's dead, so it's not going to bother him that much.
It doesn't bother him. But that's why I said that I'm glad that I didn't pay any money for it, because there are versions of this available on Amazon, and there's some kind of imprint that's publishing a paperback version of it with the complete ending. I don't know that they're in any way connected to his estate. Because his obituary said he had kids, so I would like to think that his kids are, if people are selling his work, that his kids are getting something from it.
You would hope.
I would hope that, but because
I find it, I suspect it to be unlikely. If I'm to divine human nature properly,
because what was the there was no like publication record, and probably no rights were transferred by the fanzine. It was just kind of yoinked, and
Wow.
and so that's why I'm glad I didn't pay money for it. Speaking of editing, Kieran, there is one other thing that I discovered I kind of went down a YouTube rabbit hole on this. So most of what I've been saying for the last like 15 minutes has been like stuff that I've gleaned. Some editor came along who had read Eye of Argon like half a dozen times. And like on the 6th time, is like, you know what? There's a story in here. There's a story in here. Let me edit it, slice it down, keep the story pretty much as it is, keep the characters as they are, and then just see if we can. So it became Grignire the Accordion, a retelling of the Eye of Argon, which is also currently available on Amazon.com. Which is something that annoyed me because I wanted to take on that challenge after kind of we did this. That's kind of what I had in mind. Like, if I edit this thing, what could I do with it? Because what's the problem? And we kind of touched on what the problem is. It's like he's overdoing it. Yeah. He's overdoing the keening and the purple prose, and he's trying way too hard to make everything epic, when if he just dialed it back a little bit and made sure he hit all those transitions you were talking about, Mike, there could be a story.
Yep.
That might, it wouldn't be brilliant, but it would function.
Yeah. It would be firmly within the wheelhouse of like pulp written within a certain era. Yeah.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder if one of the reasons everybody seized on this is because by the time you get to the 70s, like you're starting to see something of like a comedic backlash, cultural backlash against the Howard style.
Sure.
I don't know because I don't remember the 70s. But
also, but I mean, like at that point, Howard's work was like 40 some odd years old or more. Like,
Sure.
it had been around.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I
mean, I couldn't speak what the literary world was like in the 70s because at the end of the 70s, I was 6. And while I had a very good reading comprehension of 6, 3rd or 4th grade, I believe, I still wasn't tackling anything beyond Heinlein's Junior series,
Sure.
you know?
right on.
So I couldn't tell you what the literary scene was like in the 70s regarding sci-fi and fantasy at that time. I do know that's around the time that D&D came out.
Yeah.
And became popularized. And I don't know when Jack Vance stuff got published, Tales of the Dying Earth. I suspect that was like 60s, I think, because he was friends with Frank Herbert of Dune fame. So I would imagine around the same time. You are right that I think one of the things that annoyed me about this story, this manuscript, was that despite its failings, there is some potential there.
Yeah.
It's like, now wait a minute, this isn't just utter nonsense and slapdash bullshit. This is some effort put into it. There is a story in it. It's just bogged down by some ludicrous friggin' synonyms.
Yeah.
You know?
You can see the effort in it is the thing. Like, you can see the kid trying. Trying to make something. I'm going to make this cool. And he can't do it because he doesn't know how yet.
And
let's be honest, even our best attempts at purple prose are typically done fucking tongue in cheek.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Mike.
And you still have to follow the less is more rule, even with purple prose, because if you just throw everything at the wall like this kid did, then it's like, yeah, it's a blinding mess, literally.
A blinding foot of flashing steel.
Yeah.
And I mean, and to be fair, the kid never had an editor.
No.
I mean, shit. Even on the short stories I wrote in high school, which I got like the highest grade in English I ever got was like for my senior short story. Like, we had the benefits of when he turned in our draft to our teacher, they'd make notes and clarifications about, well, this point here, can you clarify on this point here? A good base story, but your language is a little off here. I at least had that in some of my work that I turned in papers for, and it seems to me that this kid didn't have that at all.
No. In fact,
I would be amazed if he ever did a single editing round on this before he turned it in.
Yeah.
Not only that, but this thing was because this is a fanzine. This thing was fucking mimeographed.
Yeah.
This is mimeographed, and it was typed up by somebody else that wasn't him to put in the mimeograph machine. So how do we know that half of the spelling errors were even his?
Spelling mistakes weren't even him.
Yeah.
In fact, I think there was a line in that later interview. I was like, so I wish some of those spelling errors had. I think he did say, I wish some of those spelling mistakes had that appeared later. I don't think he made that many spelling errors. I think the typist did.
Well, it's the version that I read online. I'm just going to read some of this from the transcriber's note. It just says, no mere transcription can give the true flavor of the original printing of the Eye of Argon. It was mimeographed with stencils cut on an elite manual typewriter. Many letters were so faint as to be barely readable, others were overstruck, and some that were to be removed never got painted out with correction fluid. Usually only one space separated sentences, while paragraphs were separated by a blank line and were indented by 10 spaces. Many words were grotesquely hyphenated, and there were illustrations. I cannot do them justice in mere words, but they were a match for the text. These are the major losses of this version.
The version I have has the illustrations and has the indented by... Like, the one I've got appears to be pretty...
faithful?
Pretty in line, faithful to what you just described there.
And I was like, okay, so if this is this is like almost maybe like a purple monkey dishwasher issue, telephone, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, look, with the stories that you guys put out, there is at least a couple rounds of self-editing before it even gets edited. The editing goes down. Editing gets down. I mean, if by no other means, usually quite a few times, and even when I go through to lay it all out and put it in, if I see something that's a very obvious mistake, I just fix it.
Yeah.
I just like.
That's what the guys at Broadswords and Blasters have said in the contract.
It's like, okay,
we will fix obvious spelling errors and any mistakes, but we will do so. This is in the contract I signed. We will do so only with your. We're going to show these what we do before we do it to your story. Nothing else will be changed without your express permission.
Like I don't fuck around with spelling. I mean, basically, the only thing I really just changed is spelling.
Yeah.
Or duplicate words if like I catch one, it's like, okay, that just was doubled in there or something like that. Like, and spelling only if I'm very, very certain it's not like if it's a name, I leave it the fuck alone. If it's a proper location, I leave it the fuck alone, especially in fantasy pieces, just because
proper nouns.
I leave it the hell alone. Like any proper noun gets left the hell alone. And in some cases, verbs, if I realize that they are a verb made up for the story, I'm like, okay, I'm leaving this in because this is very clearly intentional. A lot of reading intent. But I do minor editing. Very little. Very little. Like a very tiny amount. And it's just cleanup editing. Like, I'm not, like, you know what?
I try to do...
I'm leaving it as...
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. It's like, it's just minor cleanup. Like, dust spot there. I'll just, get dusted a little bit. That's all I'm doing. I'm not trying to disturb the mantelpiece, if you get what I'm saying.
No.
Well, it's like I am technically the editor, so like I do try to do a pass on all of our stuff.
You do.
Before, it makes it in. Like sometimes some things get past me and I'll go through the issue later and be like, shit. But but usually I try to make at least a couple passes and try to.
You're good. I don't read it until it arrives in my in the paperback form at my house. But yeah, there's no editorial control of this, and what editorial control there was probably made it worse. This is not Twilight or what am I thinking? Twilight, 50 Shades of Grey.
Right.
It's 50 Shades of Grey,
which was a fanfic of Twilight. It was a fanfic
of Twilight, and it's also dreadful, but E.L. James is laughing all the way to the bank. So if you make fun of 50 Shades of Grey, if you make fun of E.L. James, so what? You're not going to hurt her. And she's, from what I've heard, she's filled with pride and arrogance about what she's created, so she deserves it. That's fine. If you got paid for writing something that's garbage, by all means, open the floodgates. But the great mystery here to me is at what point from the Ozark sci-fi fanzine did somebody who's actually a professional sci-fi writer in San Francisco get a hold of it? How did that happen? Because that's where things went. This should have been just forgotten.
Well, no, I know, but I mean, you figure there were probably other comparable stories or stories that weren't quite as bad that got similar treatment, right?
No, not the level of this.
Maybe not. I don't know. No, and I'm not saying to the level of this, but what I'm saying is that there was probably already a community of people, or at least editors or people that were involved in the literature that were circulating there had to be other stories that were get a load of this.
Yeah, you're probably
right. and they'd have a chuckle about it, but then that's one of those things that due to human nature just sort of inherently escalates. So there were probably stories before the Eye of Argon that were that were not good, but then they got to the Eye of Argon and they were like, oh no, this is like Plan 9 from Outer Space bad.
Plan 9 from Outer Space bad, yeah. Yeah.
And people do that
again,
with B
Ed
movies
Wood
too.
got
Yeah.
paid. He didn't get paid a lot, but he made a living making movies.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally pick up on the vibe you got on this, man, and I agree. Like,
If he was some
it's
guy who thought he gave the world Shakespeare, and
that'd be one
if he
thing.
was like not who's Neil Breen.
Oh shit.
If he was Neil Breen, then you could not dump on this hard enough. But he's not. He's just some
I mean, I was gonna say Ron L. Hubbard, but hey,
worst of all. Yes, that may be the worst person we've talked about tonight. At least Manson.
I mean, I've read some of
went to
Hubbard
jail, and he deserved to go to jail. But so did L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
But this Jim piece, dude, I got no hate for him. Like like I said, I feel the tragedy is what happened to him or what didn't happen to him. Like he wrote a love letter to Conan that ended up in a fanzine, and
people just
he should at least gotten, and he probably never saw a dime from it. He got plenty of scorn. But he doesn't sound like, from what you've described me, because I haven't done any research on him, but like, he doesn't sound like a person who is particularly, arrogant or, confident in what he'd written anyway. He's like, well, I was 16.
Yeah.
And I got published, and this was amazing to me,
I wrote something when I was 12. That was the first thing I ever wrote. And it was my love letter to Douglas Adams.
Oh, nice.
And it is the worst piece of shit that you have ever read. And I showed it to my parents, and they said, no. They're like, you didn't like it? I was like, no, Andrew, this isn't good. I was like, oh. Okay. Okay, I'll do better next time.
See, I never developed early as a written storyteller, but I was very good at telling stories, very imaginative, fanciful stories as a child. Sketching out comics, actually. Doing like one panel Far Side type stuff, but not in the vein of that. Just stuff that was directly related to my experiences and specifically the things I had. One of my friends dug up something when I was 13 that I had drawn out. Relating to the food of the institution I had been in. Mishmash with the California raisins. And I don't know where I don't even remember drawing that shit.
That's amazing.
But it was my commentary on institutionalized food. And, so that's the type of portrait I did. Was it art? But am I ashamed of it? No, because it was the result of my experiences and my ability to express them at the time.
Well, and you wrote about what you knew.
Yeah.
I wrote about what I knew. Shitty food and the California raisins.
Hey, but you did it.
You did do it. Like I was talking about misting at the beginning of this. I took that thing that I wrote when I was 12 and I misted the fuck out of it. And I made fun of it because that was kind of like my way to like, okay, I was 12, but god damn, this is bad. And just kind of like, I keep it up there just because just so I don't develop that kind of like arrogance, but it's also like, okay, this is the starting point. You grow from here. You grow.
Yeah, the one story that I wrote that I alluded to that I got like a A+ in it was a cyberpunk type story. Nice. Which early 90s, that was about in theme. Flawed, but largely a world of my own creation. I didn't borrow very heavily from. I borrowed some of the science from other stories, but I certainly didn't borrow any of the settings or anything. I made up what I knew. I knew Baltimore and I knew Washington, so I created the Baltimore-Washington Metroplex, a city where both the mega cities had grown into one.
Yeah, kind of like that kind of the sprawl in Gibson. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a setting I knew. I wrote the cities I knew, and that sort of thing. I wrote what little I understood about architecture with like a ginormous tower that was a mile high, but it was in the shape of a pyramid because that's structurally sound. That kind of thing. Um, you know, Not great storytelling, but some pretty solid chops there. And I wrote about a cyborg who basically was just a brain in a metal body that was angsty as fuck. Well, I was a teenager. I knew angst real well. And Lost Humanity is pretty easy to write when you're pretty angsty on your own.
Yep. That sounds like to get all the notes.
That's the only thing that I credit for that being as good as it is because I wrote what I knew.
Yeah. Well, and most people are, going to be like, oh, that's a brain in a jar. The brain in the jar does not feel good about being a brain in the jar. You know what? That makes sense. I wouldn't be happy either.
You're right. He's got a bunch of mental illnesses. Well, yeah, I guess that kind of goes with that.
Try to feel better, brain in a jar. That sucks. Yeah, it's relatable.
My dick got blown off, man. Okay, I ain't got a dick.
That sucks.
Cyborg Johnny.
I'm a Ken doll from the waist down. It's not good, man. They didn't even give you like a suction dildo with a suction cup to just stick there or anything. Just nothing.
Leap tall buildings in a single bound, but like, so what?
Yeah.
Can't write my name in the snow anymore. Ah, God. The inhumanity.
What has been lost?
But yeah, no, it's actually, I kind of wonder at people that write really well when they're young. I don't know what happened to this guy, and I can't remember his name. But on the BBS in my high school, he had published a work that he had written for a paper for English class. And he was a magnet student, which means he's very bright. And it's wherein he described his cesarean birth as like being ripped by Jason Voorhees from a sleeping bag in a slasher film. It was genius shit, and he was like maybe 15 years old when he wrote this. Mind you, he got in trouble with the principal of our school for writing this.
Well, yeah.
Fuck the principal of our school. That dude was an asshole. But like, it was yes, it was lurid. Yes, it was good, but it was genius. I mean, who takes the description of their own cesarean birth and alludes to it to Camp Crystal Lake? I mean, it was great writing.
Mm-hmm.
It was great writing. Mm-hmm. It was posted up on our bulletin board for all to read, and it was good shit. And he was young, but like, he took what he knew.
Yeah.
And wonderful. And I really wonder at young writers how some of them write so well when they're limited in experience. Like, life hasn't really happened to them, yet they somehow managed to like put forth these works that are like, holy fuck, how old is the person that wrote this?
Yeah.
Well, so I have a thought on that. I think, there's one of the rules for writing is you got to read a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I think for particularly young writers, especially of a certain age, so much of their living can actually happen through text. And if you're a voracious reader, you develop a vocabulary and you learn about things and gain an insight into experiences and concepts with which you personally may not have any experience.
Mm-hmm.
But if you consume enough, if you digest enough text, you can kind of work out in a way that's good enough to maintain the suspension of disbelief that this is how it would go. This is how it is. Somebody that's like would experience this thing this way. So,
yeah, I think back to this kid, and I find it kind of funny because I remember we were on bulletin boards, so this was like the precursor to like internet forums and all that. Yeah. And me and him had like our screen names had this like adversarial relationship where he'd always take me down a peg, and then I'd have some pithy shit to say back. And I finally met him in real life, and he was like a magnet, very nerdy kid. And at this time, I would think I was a senior in high school. I'd reached my adult height, and I was more of a goth than you could even say. Black clothing, black trench coat, whole nine. I was a scary looking dude. for that time. And like and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm so-so." Oh, I said, "Oh, I'm so-and-so." He's like, and he looked a little taken aback because he knew he had said some shit. I said, "Oh no, dude, it's great. I love what you write. I love your comeback. You said to me this. It was absolutely," and we hit it off. And I think he realized past the initial shock, "Oh shit, I said some shit to some dude that might wreck me and might not have taken it." And I think he had a certain amount of relief that I appreciated the wit behind what he said and took it in good cheer. Like I was like, "Oh no, dude, it's fucking great. I love it."
That's back when you didn't take the internet seriously.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, it's back. It's back during the time of my life where I still don't where I had already realized taking myself seriously was never going to be a smart option for me, and that was just better. Especially when someone said something particularly funny and witty. I'm like, wow, that's about me, but goddamn, that's funny. Like, it's not personal. It's not aimed at my family or any personal traits about me because they don't know me. It's just aimed at something I said. Well, I fucking said it, and I said it in a matter of public record, so fuck yeah, man.
Yep. The whole internet would be better if we all functioned that way. If we all knew how to take on the chin.
I think...
Here.
It's like, nah, it was good. Like it's hard to take something personal that wasn't meant personal.
Yeah.
At least to me.
Yeah.
I hope that guy went on to be a writer of some import. Like I can't remember his name, so I couldn't say, but I hope he did carry on. He had quite the wit.
Yeah. I think it's what it all comes down to eventually is you got to have that beautiful tornadic combination of like talent, effort, and having the right thing at the right time when someone wants to do something with it. I think that's the thing that you need. And nowadays you can get things sent out into the world real easy, and so there are probably, as we all know, there are probably a million even worse versions of Eye of Argon floating out there on the internet. I know because I've seen them. God in heaven. Indiana Jones and Han Solo looking for the mysterious Rod of Yan. That's a real story.
I've heard some good fanfic.
And it's not the most terribly written thing in the universe. It's not incompetent. It's just kind of boring, and you're just like, this isn't a good idea. You think this is a good idea, but it's not a good idea. It doesn't. And then there's Nazis that show up in space. There's Nazis and stormtroopers, and the Nazi character is the worst thing. he does and does not have a German accent. It's.
Oh no, I'm laughing because I believe you.
And it's just.
I don't doubt it. Like. I mean, we did cover a little bit of the Transformers fanfic, and now there's the deliberately funny shit.
Oh boy!
And even the not deliberately funny shit was still not terrible. It just was like very clearly self-insert fanfic. But then there's the Transformers /fic I've read, and I'm haunted.
Slash fiction should not be spoken of. It should you just put that in a box.
I have Argon certainly was painful from a grammatical and spelling point of view, and I will certainly be haunted by it to my end of my days, but not in the same way.
Yeah,
no,
and Jim Thies wasn't setting out to like blind us with his prose. I might need to go get my eyes checked, like after reading it, but he wasn't trying to hurt me.
Yeah, he was trying to do something cool, and it became one of those things that's so bad it's good, and it's taken on a life as so bad it's good. And despite everything that you could say in defense of it as not being the worst thing in the world, just like Plan 9 from Outer Space isn't really the worst movie ever made. Like Manos Hands of Fate is 1,000 times worse than Plan 9.
It's a bad movie.
It's so bad.
It is bad.
And there is I read a Star Trek fan fiction about Ferengis that makes Eye of Argon look like
Shakespeare, probably.
like The Naked and the Dead. Like, you
Oh
know,
wow.
pick a. Yeah, I was thinking of that. I was thinking of Norman Mailer because you were talking about people who hit it off young, and
Yeah.
Norman Mailer was like 23 when he wrote that, and it's by everyone's consent, it's still the best thing he ever wrote. Like, he never beat that, just like Orson Welles never beat Citizen Kane.
I mean, a lot of people, the first thing that they actually get out there, that's their best shit, because it's they've worked on it the most.
Yeah.
And also, if you think about this, there's certain allowances you got to make for pulp. I mean, for instance, when I was scrolling through my Kindle trying to, organize it and get this all together, I noticed that I had a copy of Burrow. Not, I can't remember his name exactly. The guy that wrote John Carter, Warlord of Mars. His first book, A Princess of Mars.
Edgar Burroughs.
Edgar Rice Burroughs. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Edgar. The guy that wrote Tarzan, yeah. And his foray into sci-fi pulp, A Princess of Mars, and they never have adapted John Carter properly, which is a damn shame because, it's good pulp, but it's pulp.
Yeah.
Pulp has an intention of high adventure,
it's fun.
Purple Pro. I mean, it is what it is. It's fun. Pulp is intended to be fun, not super serious commentary about all sorts of things.
And I think people screw it up by trying to add depth where it's not really supposed to have depth. Pulp is kinetic, essentially. You're supposed to just
you move.
And pulp is outlandish, like Doc Savage, Man of Bronze.
Yeah.
I mean, very outlandish.
He's a doctor.
Very
he fucking
outlandish.
Punches things. Yeah, and it's
like, there's no such thing as a Conan novel.
No,
there's no Conan novels. Howard wrote short stories. Some of them were as long as novelettes. One or two of them might be as the length of a novella, but it's all short. It does its thing and it goes because that's Conan. He's always on the move. Yeah.
And I really kind of feel the original Schwarzenegger Conan film kind of captures that all.
I love the original.
Every
time I watch that, it gets better. Like, the first time I thought, I was like, this is kind of a weird movie, but now I watch it again and it's just, man.
I saw the Philharmonic Orchestra doing the music from Conan.
Yeah.
The Anvil of Crom. The whole, just beauteous. Like the soundtrack to that movie, just and then Mako narrating the beginning.
Only I, his chronicler. Yeah,
his chronicler.
Oh, it's so great.
I mean, beautiful. It gets better every time you watch it.
It does get better every time I watch it. James Earl Jones is in it, and it's probably the best thing James Earl Jones has ever done.
And he was in Doctor Strangelove.
He was also in
Doctor Strangelove.
He was one of the.
He was
the pilot.
Pilots.
Yeah, he's in the B-20, B-52.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was also.
He was a pilot.
He was also in a one of the Richard Chamberlain, Alan Quatermain adaptations.
Oh, yes.
In The Lost City of Gold, I think it was the second movie.
Yeah,
He plays the guy that has the battle axe that has a handle and he swings it around and he uses it to deflect arrows.
He was also in Coming to America.
Yeah.
And Coming to America, and of course, the voice of Darth Vader, which is space opera pulp.
He was also in my favorite Rankin.
Or are you telling?
Sorry, he was in my favorite. He did the voice of Omadon in my favorite Rankin Bass film, which is The Flight of Dragons.
Oh, Flight of Dragons!
Oh.
The Flight of Dragons, that was good, man.
It's one of the best ones they did, and he does the voiceover, and it's completely campy. He's totally doing B-movie villain stuff, but he sells it. It's awesome.
Lauren Green does a voice in that too, of the Green Wizard. I love the Flight of Dragons as well, man. I wish I could find that shit on DVD. It's right up there with The Last Unicorn with me, which is in of itself are beautiful. I mean, the last unicorn was actually, I think, animated by a Japanese animation company, but that thing had Christopher Lee, Mia Farrow, Jeff Bridges doing the voices in The Last Unicorn. Like, not a kids movie, but not exactly a kids movie.
I am a fan of Christopher Lee. I have to state that. Yeah.
Like it's The Last Unicorn is a lot of people's favorites for a lot of good reasons. It's
I've never seen all of it.
It's
I've
a good
seen
one.
some of it. I never watched the whole thing.
It's actually worth it. It's a fairly it's pretty coherent.
My girls might like it.
Yeah, no, they probably.
I recommend watching
it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I recommend us watching it and doing a podcast on that one because we could pull a lot from that.
Okay.
It's a well done film.
A lot to say.
That would actually be worth
a lot
it.
to say.
I'm up for that. I'm up for that. I'm up for doing The Last Unicorn. We can do that.
Okay.
But I have Argon. I mean, yeah, we ridiculed it. Yeah, we took dumps on it.
It deserves it.
But because it as a work deserves it. But I think we can also agree that this particular chagrin and antipathy does not extend to the author.
No, it shouldn't. We have to make a note of that. And normally I'm not the sort of person who's like, you can't make fun of that. Because, if something's funny, then it's funny, and that's a purely organic response. And comedy does not intersect with morality. But
no.
So you're gonna laugh at Eye of Argon, but we got to remember, you got to make the little note. You got to put the asterisks in. So I think.
And I think that's.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important note.
It's not the worst
for
story
this,
ever written. Is really the thing we got to take away.
It is bad. It is bad, but it's also, given its source, not the work. It's not a polished work.
It's not.
And
it's not.
And it's not the work of a bad person who should have known better either.
No, that's very clear. That's evident. So I think we have tortured Grigner to death.
Ginger.
I think
Ginger the accordion.
Ginger the accordion is not getting up again. He will remain in his dungeon forever. And I think it's time.
Mike, you're offline.
Mike, you're offline again.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But you're just offline.
Let's just go.
Let's just go.
So shall we wrap this up, Andrew?
Let's stick a fork in it. This has been the Eye of Argon centered episode of Shallow and Pedantic. My name is Andrew.
I'm Mike.
I'm Kieran.
All right, and stay tuned on the Patreon, patreon.com/shallowpedantic for the next episode, next issue of Unnamed Journal, which should be coming out in a day or two, something like that. All right? Okay, thank you all for stopping by.